Okay. Good evening. My name is Nathaniel Sanchez, and I'm going to presenting to y'all an alternate assessment, the Gateway Test for high school. A few TEKS/skills I want to test using the Gateway Test for high school is simplifying simple expressions, solving, which is A.4b, excuse me, solving simple equations, and A.4a. First, please let me give you a background story. I am a geometry teacher. I teach at Roy Miller High School, which, by the way, is an inner city high school. And just like most high schools, we have a big problem with students being able to solve um, simple equations and simplify simple expressions. It's a big problem. But I'm sure it's all high schools, but I think we might be a little bit more now since we're inner city. Now, being a geometry teacher, I am guilty of what's called using the end solver or control var to simplify or solve. Let me give you an example of what I sometimes do with my students. Okay. I'm given a simple problem here, right? Simple geometry problem with some simple algebra in it. What is the value of x given this picture, right? Well, I'll tell them that this angle plus this angle adds up to 90. So I tell them, right, 6x plus 3x equals 90 because this plus this equals 90. Very good. Makes that 90-degree angle, right? But then, and that's honestly, sometimes students struggle with that concept. It's understandable. Students struggle with math, right? But then they also struggle then with the algebra. So then in return, I then tell them, go ahead and 1 second, go to your calculator, turn on your end solver and just type it in. 6x plus 3x is equal to 90. And solve for x. And they get 10. So they don't have to do the algebra part of it, which they honestly struggle with. So they just come back and say, I got it, sir. And the answer is x equals 10. Which is honestly sometimes fine, depending on what your goal is. My goal in geometry class is to make sure the students are successful in doing the geometry. However, as you see, this is harmful in the fact that it hinders their algebraic growth. So when they come to Algebra 2, their algebra is a little bit weaker, which is something I always found troubling and something I've been wanting to do something about. Okay? So let me better explain this to you. Let me go ahead and tell you this next part. I went to the University of Texas A&M in Corpus Christi, and there they have something that's called a gateway test. They used the gateway test for Calculus 1 and Calculus 2 when I went there. In Calculus 1, they used to test derivatives. In Calculus 2, they used it to test integrals. A few things that they actually did when doing this test. I've always noticed they only test one skill. That's it, derivatives or integrals, depending on which subject, you know. Then they would only make 10 questions on a test. But the catch is you must score at least 8 out of 10 correctly. So it's all derivatives, all the same thing. All right, test it again and again. But you must score, get at least 8 of them correct out of 10, or they would not let you move on. You would fail the class. That's the big one right there, right? However, they did allow the students, though, and I do remember a little shake on this one, but I do remember I think they were allowed to retake at least 3 times over, at minimum, to retake that gateway test if they were struggling in derivatives. Now, I like this because in Calculus 1, you learn derivatives, which is a vital, important part to know before you move on to Calculus 2. So I like this gateway test because it helps ensures that the students studied and learned how to do derivatives before they moved on to Calculus 2. Then in Calculus 2, they would study and learn how to do integrals to help them do even better in Calculus 3. So it helped ensure, it was real good, strict guidelines. The tests weren't that hard. In fact, I remember them being easy. I passed the first time around and just wanted to retake it for fun to see if I get a perfect 100, because I think my first time was a 9. So I want to grab this and I want to apply it to the high school setting. Just instead of using it for derivatives and integrals, I'm thinking I want to apply it for simplifying simple expressions and solving simple equations. to better ensure that the student will know those basic skills for next year to come. Or even better, hopefully, the plan is, hopefully, so they can know it for the second 9 weeks. Because I'm kind of hoping to apply this gateway test in a simple 9-week period, right? Just a 9-week period. Let me show you the rubric though. There's a few things different that I'm changing as I'm applying it to the high school setting. And instead of derivatives and integrals, it's going to be used to simplify and to solve, of course. Different test each. Requirement number 1, no TI Inspire. As you see already, the TI Inspire can solve algebraic problems for them, whether it be simplifying or solving. Requirement number 2, each question must be correct all the way, which means no partial credit will be given. Requirement number 3, the student must have at least 8 correct. If the student does not have 8 correct, the student will, let's say 7 or below, the student will come out with a grade of a 0, which is a big one. That means we're serious. We want you to know how to do simple equations, right? Got to master how to do these very simple equations. And simple equations, just as you saw in our first example, something very, very easy, such as 6x plus 3x equals 9. You got to be able to do these before we move on to Algebra 2, or you won't be allowed to basically move on. But we're not exactly allowed to hold the students back based on a certain skill. So, requirement number 4, it only applies as a 10 to 15% grade of a given 9 weeks. Now, you probably already know that a 0, which will take up 10 to 15% of a grade, is devastating to students. Not especially because this gateway test, in comparison to the other tests we give them, our skills check test, is incredibly easy compared to those. So it's incredibly easy compared to the skills check test. So if anything, this is really honestly going to help the students do better rather than damage them. Because passing a skills check is so hard in our school. I'll be honest. A lot of times, it sometimes has an average of 0% around the board. Like 0% of the kids pass. And we could apply a 30-point bonus score, and that's still not good enough because they're all scoring averages of 20s and 30s. So even a 30-point bonus does not get them to passing a test, you know? So that's why I'm thinking this is very good. This will help them out as a booster, you know? Now, requirement number 5, though, they must be allowed to retake as much as needed. So if they want to come every single day after school and retake because they went to tutoring from library and just came over here, that's fine by me. If they're ready to retake any day, anytime, and as long as I'm here after school and I'm in the room, you can retake. Now, to better support this, to run smoothly, I think the following requirements also should be met during assessing. Number 1, for whichever given 9 weeks you're going to do, I believe there should be a pre-assessment, a pre-test, right? A pre-assessment, which does not count against the student. This is the primary purpose of it, is to show the growth to the student. Show them this is what you knew before, and this is how much you know now. Look at that difference, you know? It's very good. Requirement number 2, constant practice in class and out of class. This is your formal assessment and may or may not count against you, but only as a daily work grade. The key thing also is the out of class part. At our high school, we offer tutoring from 4 to 6. This is great because I could constantly give them worksheets again and again to go practice. They also have online practice and so much more. But the main point is practice, practice, practice. Giving the kids as much as chances, availability to practice whatever they would like, right? Requirement number 3, 10 to 30 different versions of the post-test, which is the gateway test itself. So we want to give make up a lot of different versions as much as possible to help with cheating and memorizing answers, because we are allowing the students to retake as much as needed. Now, that sounds like a lot of work, you know, making more than 2 versions. It sounds like a lot of work. But I'm about to show you a program that I'm going to use to help me do this so that it can be a lot convenient, and how we can make just 2 simple different versions in under 20 seconds. Allow me to show you. This program is called CUDA. Love this program. My apologies for the wait. Here's an example of what I was hoping to do. Here's one version. I call it the version pretest. Geometry Gateway Test Version Pretest for simplifying expressions. My plans are to hopefully give this one during the first 9 weeks. And it's very simple as you see. 6v plus 9v. Negative x plus negative 2x. Really, really simple stuff. All they have to do is combine like terms. Here, add a little distribution, but nothing needed. Distribution, except using letters. Combining like terms and distributing. Distributing twice and combining like terms. So extremely simple test. But we'll be a lot of you aren't shocked. Sometimes it's hard to joke up that a lot of students can do this. It's struggling that students forget this stuff over the summer, then they just don't really apply themselves with it during geometry. So how do we create a different version? Simple. I'll show you right now. So if I want a different version, let's say another version just for practice, so I could take with them to after school tutorials. I simply just push my space bar, and there's a different version. Combine like terms, just distribute. Over here, distribute, but using a letter. Same thing over here, distribute, but use a letter when distributing. Distributing and combining a like term. And number 9 and 10, distributing twice and combining like terms. And I can make the difficulty as hard as easy ones. I just want to start off easy just because this is the first trial run and we can't exactly fail that many of the students. And the best part is you could print out as many as you want for practice or so on and give them the answer keys also to them. So they go to tutor, they go at home, they practice at home, and they could practice so they could pass that test. So they have these bare basic things moving on into your second 9 weeks or during your first 9 weeks. That'd be even better. If you wanted to do it for 3 weeks, etc. All right. I want to show you also another one I did for solving equations. It's also using CUDA. Okay. And this one right here, this is for solving equations. Simple one-step equations. Start off. Still one-step equation, just using multiplication. This is combining like terms, then, solving. Distribution, then a two-step problem. And variables on both sides. So as this is basically as hard as it gets right here. So this is just another example, and I could easily go to them and just space bar. If I don't like a problem, just keep on pushing the space bar, and just create just different, as many versions as I want, And I could even tell it as I print it. Print. How many versions you want to print? Make 30 different versions. I want every student in the classroom to have a different version. And it'll do that. So we generate questions, I could scramble choices, and so on. Print answers, no answers. It's a very, very great program to use, and it's very convenient if you need a lot of different versions for the basic skills such as this. Okay. So that was using what's called CUDA. Oops. References. Number 1, Texas A&M Corpus Christi for making up the gateway test. This is where I got my original idea from. The gateway test they were used, and I just applied it to our high school settings. And number 2, CUDA for its convenience at it. It's a very, very, very good program, but if you want to know a little bit more about them, the infinite algebra problem they have, here is their support email address if you ever want to contact them. It's a very, very good program. Okay. There's one more thing I want to show just before we take off, and that was just that just because it's a gateway test does not necessarily mean that you could only test them on simple basic algebra but also geometry. I made these two up just to the side just to see, just thinking about how it would work, and one of them I put as triangle properties, right? Just different simple triangle properties. Just find the area of a triangle. If I'm given 50 and 80, what would be the third side? This one right here does the same thing, just a little bit excluding exterior angles. This is the special right triangles. And just you get the idea. Just Pythagorean theorem, multi-step, Pythagorean theorem, does it work? And equilateral and isosceles triangles, So all these different properties of triangles, I thought would be a good thing I could also maybe even use in the second or third 9 weeks, depending on it. I also did the same thing for different pairs of angles, whether it's complementary, right? Complementary or supplementary, vertical angles, adjacent angles, corresponding, alternate interior, alternate exterior, same side interior, That's just vertical angles, a little bit more complex, and that's just a linear pair. Yeah. So it's a very good tool you could use. I think the Great Weight Test is a very good thing for making sure that students pass the minimal requirements and allow unlimited retakes until they can do those, right? It's very easy, but with strict guidelines of you don't get this, you don't pass, so to speak. Now, don't get me wrong, of course, it's still possible, but I would recommend 10 to 15% of the thing. That is my presentation, but thank you very much for your time.